See all of you. Oops. It's great to see all of you on the screen, and we hope Lowell for a quick recovery, and for everybody to stay safe. Nope, stay safe. Sorry, it's been a long day. So with a quorum being present, I will call to order the September 30th, 2021 meeting of the Hudson River Park Trust Board of Directors. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, and consistent with legislation signed by Governor Hochul on September 2nd, 2021, that allows for virtual meetings under the Open Meetings Law, this meeting is being held remotely via a Zoom teleconference, enabling the general public to listen to the meeting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be posted on the Trust website, and a stenographer is providing a transcript of the meeting. The directors have received the agenda materials in advance of this meeting and are free to ask questions or comment at any time on the action items submitted for approval today. Please note, however, that questions or comments from the audience will not be entertained at this meeting. I note that the board memos and resolutions on today's agenda have been posted on the Trust website in the link entitled Board Meetings, Bylaws, and Other Materials under Board Agendas and Minutes, and thus are available to the public. There are 9 items on the consent agenda for our meeting today. The first is approval of the minutes and ratification of the actions taken at the July 29th, 2021 meeting of the Hudson River Park Trust Board of Directors. The second is authorization to amend the contract with Melk Urban Design, LLC, for landscape architecture services for the design of Pier 97. Third, authorization to amend the contract with MT Group, LLC, for park-wide materials testing services. Fourth, authorization to extend the term of contract with Abel Bainson Butts, LLP, for Chelsea Waterside Park Phase 2 design. Fifth, authorization to extend the term of contract with Rycon Group, LLC, for Pier 40 Structural Restoration Phase 6. Sixth, authorization to extend the term of the contract with Vermont Custom Nets for Pier 40 Outdoor Sports Field Perimeter Safety Net Replacement. Seventh, authorization to amend the contract with Rycon Group, LLC, for Tribeca Habitat Enhancements. Eighth, authorization to amend the contract with Olin Partnership, Ltd, for Pier 26 Landscape Architect Services. And ninth and last, ratification of and authorization to amend legal counsel retainer agreements. Unless anyone has comments or questions, I will now call for a motion to approve all of the items on the consent agenda. Any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve all of the 9 items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Oh, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is approved. Okay. The first corporate action item before the board is a request for authorization to contract with Trevcon Construction Company, Inc. for the Gansevoort Peninsula Marine Construction Phase 2. Ms. Doyle.
Good afternoon, everyone. The board has received 4 separate memos for today's meeting regarding procurements related to construction of the new park at Gansevoort Peninsula, and all of the procurements involved RFPs that were prepared in accordance with the Trust procurement guidelines. First, the Trust seeks a marine construction contractor to install the submerged habitat enhancements on the north side of the peninsula, including oyster gabions and reef balls. At the subtidal level, these submerged elements will provide enriched habitat for shellfish and finfish by simulating natural reefs. The Trust released an RFP for the Gansevoort Peninsula Marine Construction Phase 2 work for the period between August 3rd and September 1st, 2021, and received 3 proposals on the submission deadline. A selection committee comprised of Trust staff reviewed the submissions and evaluated each according to the identified selection criteria in the RFP, and also I interviewed all 3 proposers. After receiving best and final pricing offers, trust staff identified Trevcon Construction Company as the highest ranked proposer. Trevcon has worked on multiple phases of pile restoration at Pier 40 and the marine component of Pier 26, including fabrication and installation of certain habitat features, including tide pools and biohuts. Trevcon is not expected to meet the 30% MWBE subcontracting goal given the specialized nature of the marine work, and staff will seek a partial waiver from New York State. The trust will issue a waiver of the 6% service disabled veterans business subcontracting goal due to the lack of subcontracting opportunities. The trust therefore requests authorization by the board to enter into a contract with Trevcon for Gansevoort Peninsula Marine Construction Phase 2 work in an amount not to exceed $1,206,000 plus a 10% contingency for a total board authorized amount of $1,326,600. Funding will be provided by the City of New York.
Any questions? Comments? Okay, do I have a motion? Oops, let me get my script back up here so I say it exactly the right way. There we go. Okay. Do I have a motion to authorize entering into a contract with Trevcon Construction Company for Gansevoort Peninsula Marine Construction Phase 2?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. The second corporate action item before the board is authorization to contract with J.R. Cruise Corporation for Gansevoort Peninsula General Construction Phase 2 and E.G. Electric Installation Company for Gansevoort Peninsula Electrical Construction Phase 2. Ms. Doyle?
The directors have received two separate board memos for this agenda item, and I will discuss the two action items together for efficiency. The trust seeks both a general construction contractor and electrical construction contractor for Phase 2 work at the Gansevoort Peninsula that generally consists of construction of the adult fitness area, dog run, Bloomfield Street entrance, shared use road, bikeway, and esplanades, and the corresponding electrical components. The trust released RFPs for the Gansevoort Peninsula General Construction Phase 2 and Electrical Construction Phase 2 for the period between June 3rd and July 1st, 2021. The general construction RFP was extended through July 23rd to increase the number of potential respondents. The trust received 4 proposals for the general construction and 7 proposals for the electric construction by the submission deadlines. A selection committee comprised of members of the trust design, construction, and legal staff reviewed the submissions for each and evaluated each submission according to the identified selection criteria in the RFP. Based on the submitted proposals and interviews with the 4 proposers, trust staff determined J.R. Cruise Corporation to be the highest ranked respondent for the general construction Phase 2 work. J.R. Cruise has completed extensive municipal work throughout New York City and has experience with roadway reconstruction and subsurface utility work. Based on the submitted proposals and interviews with the top 3 ranked firms, trust staff determined EJ Electric Installation Company to be the highest ranked respondent to conduct the electrical construction Phase 2 work. EJ has completed work for the trust previously at Pier 26 and is currently the electrical contractor for the first phase at Gansevoort Peninsula as approved by its board at the June 3rd, 2021 meeting. Both companies have committed to meet the 30% MWBE and 6% SDVOB goals. The trust therefore requests authorizations by the board to contract with J.R. Cruise Corporation for Gansevoort Peninsula General Construction in an amount not to exceed $12,632,500 plus a 10% contingency for a total board authorized amount of $13,895,750, and with EJ Electric Installation Company for Gansevoort Peninsula Electrical Construction Phase 2 in an amount not to exceed $1,400,000 plus a 10% contingency for a total board authorized amount of $1,540,000. Funding for both contracts is available from the City of New York.
Any questions or comments? Noreen, how many bids do you get for something like this for the general contractor position?
It ranges based on the construction and bidding climate in the city at any given point. We were pleased there are a lot of contracts coming to the board today. And for the most part, I would say what you see here is fairly typical. Often it's about 3, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 5. It's never 15.
Yeah. Okay. If no further questions or comments, I will call for a motion to authorize entering into contracts with J.R. Cruise Corporation for Gansevoort Peninsula General Construction Phase 2 and with EJ Electric Installation Company for Gansevoort Peninsula Electrical Construction Phase 2. Do I have that motion?
Moved.
Second.
Second. Great. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. The third item before the board is a request for authorization to contract with Gansevoort Peninsula Building General Plumbing, Mechanical, and Electrical Construction. Ms. Doyle.
The last board memo on today's agenda related to construction at Gansevoort Peninsula involves 4 separate procurements for the construction of a new park building that would contain public restrooms, space for park maintenance and operations, and a small concession. Because the trust is subject to the Wicks law, it must separately procure the general construction, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical work needed for the building. The trust issued 4 separate requests for proposals for general construction, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical work for the Gansevoort Peninsula building on June 9th, and then extended the submission deadline several times to try to increase the number of potential respondents. Proposals were due on September 3rd, 2021, and the trust received 5 proposals in response to the building general construction RFP, 2 proposals for the plumbing construction RFP, and 5 proposals for the electrical construction RFP. Selection committees consisting of trust staff are currently reviewing the proposals subject to the criteria set forth in the RFPs with the assistance of Gil Bain as the construction manager. The trust received only 1 proposal for the building mechanical construction despite extensive outreach and extensions of the submission date. So pursuant to our procurement guidelines, that RFP has failed. Because staff does not believe that issuing a new RFP is likely to result in a different outcome, staff is now undertaking a review of the submission to determine whether it is in the trust's best interest to make a single source award as permitted under the procurement guidelines. The one proposer has a good reputation as an experienced mechanical construction contractor who has performed mechanical construction work with other New York City agencies. Additionally, the proposed pricing submitted by the respondent is modestly less than that estimated by the construction site manager for the scope of work. As discussed in the board memo, while the trust staff is still reviewing the proposals and still needs to schedule interviews and conduct the responsibility determinations to make selections, staff has reviewed the proposed pricing for each proposal and seeks board authorization to allow the trust to enter into 4 contracts required to construct the building. Each authorization would cap the maximum contract value. The amount of each proposed cap has been determined based on staff's review of the range of pricing received for each RFP compared against the professional cost estimates for each building trade that were prepared prior to the procurement process commencing. Trust staff would then seek ratification by the directors at the December board meeting for each contract, along with the names of the selected contractor and the maximum contract price. At that time, staff would also seek board approval for some contingency funding in case there are unforeseen issues during the construction of the new building requiring change orders. This approach would allow construction of the Gansevoort Park building to remain on schedule so that the Gansevoort Park building can open at the same time as the rest of the peninsula in 2023. Staff therefore requests board authorization to contract for the Gansevoort Peninsula building general construction work for a maximum contract value of up to $9,650,000 for the Gansevoort Peninsula plumbing construction work for a maximum contract value of up to $850,000 for the Gansevoort Peninsula building mechanical construction work for a maximum contract value of up to $500,000 and the Gansevoort Peninsula electrical construction work for a maximum contract value of up to $1,100,000. Funding for these 4 contracts will be from the City of New York.
Thank you, Noreen. Any questions or comments? Please.
Noreen, did I hear you say for general construction, what is the maximum that you're seeking?
$9,650,000.
Okay, because the bids are all over the place. I mean, it's a very wide range.
It is a wide range. The amount that was established there essentially discounted the outlier with respect to this based on the professionally estimated cost prior to the procurement process commencing.
I know you said you're required to do 4 bids for these 4 different works.
Trades, right?
Trades. In the staff view, is there any efficiency if you had the option to not do 4 separate contracts? Would you be saving anything by doing one larger general contract, do you think?
Yes, because I think that everybody has to build in more coordination between the other trades associated with this. And I suspect that Kevin Quinn is on the call. And since the other, Kevin, are you on?
Sure. Yes, I'm here.
Would you like to supplement what I just said?
No, you're absolutely right. It would be more efficient to bid it as one contract, and then the general contractor would then sub out to people he's familiar with and has a working relationship for the other trades. But in compliance with the Wicks law, we are compelled to do it this way, which is how city and state agencies do it, and we will make this work.
Okay.
And does the sole source, if you have to do a sole source for the general contracting, does that, you still have to do the others under the Wicks law? Is that right?
I believe that if it's more than $3 million as the cost estimate for the building, that's required regardless.
I see. Okay.
Chris or Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
That's correct. It's $3 million.
And have you done this process of getting authorization just to enter into the contracts, which you will bring back, or with the maximum, which you will then bring back? Have you done that before?
We have done this before. We debated, I will say, fairly heavily internally the benefits or not of this approach for this. I mean, we do think that because Gansevoort is so anticipated as a public open space, the same with Pier 97. Pier 97 will have a public a playground, for example. Gansevoort has a ball field. Asking people to wait several more months for a bathroom, I think we decided that we thought this was a responsible approach that disclosed to you the range of bidding prices so that you can tell that it's real, that actually was vetted against the professional cost estimates that came in, and that doesn't require us to negotiate for or to pick that the maximum price that we are identifying for now. We would vet the proposals, and if there's a lower respondent that we don't have to spend that much for, that's who we would select if they're qualified. So we think that this provides for board members the combination of transparency and for the construction schedule benefits.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions or comments?
One other question. Is each one of these on its own lower than your cost estimates or around that for each of the trades? Your internal sort of estimation?
I think Kevin has access to that. I know that in
Sure.
the aggregate, we were on track, but Kevin.
The GCs are slightly higher and the electrical is higher also. And maybe just to add a further point on the earlier question, the reason why we're seeking kind of pre-authorization, it was our intent to have bidders selected in prep for this board meeting, but we extended the bid dates multiple times in an effort to get as many bidders as possible, because bidding in this climate, the COVID climate, and the commodity prices were going all over the place. We extended the time to the max to allow us to get the best variety and quantity of bidders, which is why we are doing it this way.
Appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? If not, can I have a motion to authorize the trust to enter into 4 contracts for Gansevoort Peninsula building general, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical construction?
So moved.
And-
Second.
Great, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion is approved. Okay, the next item for the board is a request for authorization to contract for Pier 97 building general, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical construction. Noreen?
Thank you. Similar to the last board action item, trust staff also seeks authorization by the directors to enter into 4 contracts related to the new building at Pier 97, which will also contain public restrooms, a maintenance and operations space, and small concession. The trust released 4 separate RFPs for the Pier 97 building, general, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical construction on July 22nd. The submissions deadline for the general plumbing and electrical RFPs was ultimately extended through September 10th, and that for the mechanical RFP was extended until September 17th. The trust received 5 proposals for the Pier 97 general construction, 2 proposals for plumbing construction, 3 proposals for mechanical construction, and 4 proposals for electrical construction. While trust staff is still reviewing the proposals and needs to schedule interviews and conduct the responsibility determinations to make each contract selection, staff has reviewed the proposed pricing from each proposal and seeks board authorization to proceed with entering into 4 contracts required to construct the building. Each authorization would cap the maximum contract value. The amount of each proposed cap has been determined based on staff's review of the range of pricing received for each RFP compared against the professional cost estimates for each building trade prior to the procurement process commencing. At the next board meeting, trust staff would then seek ratification for each contract inclusive of the name of the selected contractor and the maximum contract price. Staff would also seek board approval for some contingency funding in case there are unforeseen issues during construction of the new building requiring change orders. The trust therefore seeks board authorization to contract for the Pier 97 building general construction work for a maximum value of up to $10,900,000, for the Pier 97 plumbing construction work for a maximum contract value of up to $1 million, for the Pier 97 building mechanical construction work for a maximum contract value of up to $500,000, and for the Pier 97 building electrical construction work for a maximum contract value of up to $1,625,000. Funding for these contracts will be provided from capital budget funds allocated by New York State and restricted funds from the sale of air rights.
Noreen, isn't this the same type of work that we were just talking about for Gansevoort?
Exactly.
So how come we got multiple bidders at 97 and only 1 bidder at Gansevoort?
It's a good question. Our construction team actually reached out to we were conducting the procurements simultaneously and bidders have to ask for packages. So we tried to, as I understand it, interest and entice these respondents to also apply for the other site, and they declined.
I mean, I understand that people would rather work in Hell's Kitchen than in Greenwich Village. But it makes no sense that they'd only bid on one and not want the other.
I mean, it may be a matter of capacity. Maybe it's a nearby construction job that has some efficiencies. Hard to know. But your point was noticed here as well, and the outreach did occur.
The point that everyone likes Hell's Kitchen better than Greenwich Village.
I would say that the mechanical systems are different. So certain vendors may have more experience with one type of system versus another. So the building sizes and uses are similar, but the actual HVAC systems are different.
And there you go, blowing my whole theory, Kevin.
Yeah.
Have any of these vendors worked with you guys before on other projects, the mechanical ones?
Yes.
And the single sort of bidder on the Gansevoort side, has that vendor worked with you before?
Yeah, the single vendor has actually worked for the trust before and worked when I was at City Parks. I worked on a job with them also. So I have experience with them.
Okay.
Is,
More extensive at City Parks, right, Kevin? In
Yeah.
that case.
Yes, true.
Yeah, I mean, I'll note again here, the electrical construction, I mean, there's like a sort of almost a double bid from the lower one. It seems to be sort of really quite wide.
Sometimes what happens, which is where the interview process comes in after there's some initial ranking, is that people haven't understood the scope properly.
Mhm.
It's also another downside of the Wix law is that trades know that they are one bidder of four, and all four trades are needed for the job to progress. So some play kind of a lottery type. They just throw a number in, a high one, hoping to win it.
are we just, did we give as much time for people to respond on these as we normally do? Or was it a little bit foreshortened?
The initial period, I think, was a little bit foreshortened because we were trying to meet the board meeting. And I mean, honestly, it's worth saying, Kevin, Kate, the whole team, they're small. And there are a lot of procurements here, and each of which needed, the whole design package, the cost estimates, the everything else like that to get them out the door. And MWBE and the outreach and all kinds of other things like that. So it has been a push the last 6 months to get all of these out the door. But I think ultimately by the time the response period ended up being about the same, Kevin, as normal, it's that we didn't have enough time on the back end to interview all of these people.
Yeah, and we also push, it's a little bit beyond what we would normally do. But in general, we received more than 3 bids for almost all of them, except for that mechanical, that one contract. The rest, personally, I was pretty pleased to see the amount of participation given the bidding environment that we were in and all the unknowns.
Yeah. Okay, well, just also want to say we really appreciate all that that Kevin and Kate and the entire team are doing to get all these out and procure appropriately. So, okay, any other questions or comments about the Pier 97 for trades contracts?
I have a more general question. Is sort of all of the supply chain issues, you think, affecting the bids that you're getting now?
Yeah.
Compared to?
Oh, yeah. for
Yes.
sure,
Yes,
for
yeah.
sure.
And we actually will tell you that we were really sweating these building responses in particular. We were very nervous about, what might happen given what you just asked.
The site work contracts were generally actually came in lower, but the building projects I was personally terrified of and kind of happy the way it turned out because of all the commodity materials used in the building versus the site work. It's all mostly local.
Also, as we discussed for the Chelsea Waterside Comfort Station the last time, our buildings are small and they don't allow for a lot of efficiencies. So, that really, again, applies or affects the cost.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder, given that you're doing doing restrooms and they're at 2 different ends of the park, if there would be any efficiency in thinking about those things in a more coordinated way. So,
We did think about that. There's a all the eggs in one basket concern with that. That in the end won the argument.
okay.
Well, it's a challenging time. Certainly my agencies are feeling it, and I don't know. Purnima, it sounds like you might be experiencing some of it as well. And
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're actually considering buying some of the material for projects that don't come online 2 years from now, 3 years from now, because of these issues. So,
Wow.
yeah.
well. Okay, can I get a motion to authorize the trust to enter into 4 contracts for Pier 97 building general, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical construction?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Yeah.
Second,
Second.
thank you, Pam. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is approved. Okay, the 5th item before the board is a request for authorization to amend the contract with Wilson Conservation LLC for the conservation of the private passage sculpture. Ms. Doyle?
Private Passage is a site-specific sculpture by Malcolm Cochran that was fabricated and installed as part of the original construction of the Clinton Cove section of Hudson River Park in the West 50s. The sculpture is a representation of a monumental bottle lying on its side and includes porthole windows allowing observers to view inside to a representation of a stateroom from the Queen Mary created in stainless steel. Over the years, the original coating has chipped in places such that the exposed base steel has rusted. The sculpture was further damaged during Hurricane Sandy when salt water infiltrated the interior of the bottle. In February 2020, the trust entered into a 6-month contract with Wilson Conservation to prepare a conservation plan for private passage in the amount of $29,700. Wilson Conservation, working with the artist, secured New York City's Public Design Commission's approval for both the conservation methods and conservator. The trust now requests board authorization to amend the contract with Wilson to cover the full scope of the conservation. The scope includes removing the piece from the site and transporting it to a specialized facility, making repairs to the steel, and applying a new painted finish that will be more easily maintainable. Upon completion of the restoration work, the sculpture will be reinstalled in Clinton Cove. Under the trust procurement guidelines, a sole source procurement is appropriate when only one contractor can perform the services required by the trust. As described fully in the board memo, Wilson Conservation is singularly qualified to perform the work due to its close working relationship with the artist and the approval requirements of the Public Design Commission in such instances. The trust therefore requests board authorization to amend the contract with Wilson Conservation LLC for the conservation of private passage for an additional $423,500 and to extend the term of the contract by 10 months through June 23rd, 2022, by which time the trust expects the work will be complete. Funding for this project is available from the trust capital maintenance budget, either through funding by New York City or restricted funds from the trust sale of air rights.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Yes. Is the patina that's on this sort of sculpture, is that something that has developed over time, or is that part of the original art? I know where the damage is, but I am looking at the rest of it and wondering whether when you conserve this and bring it back to sort of life, what happens?
I would say that the intent was always a little bit of a bottle that had the appearance of having some light or something on it as opposed to an entirely matte experience. But Kate O'Malley, Kate, are you on here?
Yes.
Kate, maybe you can speak more fully to this. She's been working with the conservator.
Sure. So the intention is that the revised finish would it would include the modeling. It's going to be, the artist has developed a technique with the specialized painting firm that's going to make it look like bronze, weathered bronze, but it won't be bronze. It will be a painted finish. So
And
there will be no rust, but there will be some variation in the shades of green.
And that is likely to be more weather resistant? Is that the sort of
The
intent?
finish that's on there currently was sort of a proprietary, sort of baked on type of system. And as it chipped off, it wasn't possible for it to be repaired on site. And so they've developed a system that's essentially painted that you could get a skilled faux finisher to come back using the right paint, or even perhaps our maintenance staff could be trained or supervised to just touch things up as damage occurs in the future.
And Noreen, I didn't catch, how much are you asking for this extension?
It's an additional $423,500. And that includes the conservator working with the actual conservation team on site, and the transport and the reinstallation.
Okay.
And it is big. If you can't tell, this is monumental.
Yeah.
I'll just ask a question of the total budget amount. What is the cost of doing the work versus the time and effort of the removal and reinstallation? And did you guys think at all about just doing the work in situ?
We
Just
did
curious,
look
kind of-
at doing it in
Yeah.
situ. Because of the nature of the work, you would need to fully enclose it with a tent and other techniques, and some of the chemicals and other things that are needed wouldn't optimally occur in the public park next to the river. So we rejected that option. And it also would have taken basically the majority of the Clinton Cove lawn out of service for the general public's use.
Got it.
He can describe the general breakdown in costs.
I mean, as you noted, removing this giant sculpture and transporting it offsite, it is a significant portion of the cost, but it is a high, it's a specialized facility. It's all using expert art riggers. And, we evaluated and felt that as opposed to building a structure on site, it was more efficient, and we're certain that we'll get the result that we're looking for.
Got it. Yeah, also the season. I mean, if it's winter, there'll be
Right.
all those other issues. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
We even considered, I think, putting it in the boathouse off season to do it, but with the chemicals, and that wouldn't work either.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Noreen, is there an issue with the funding for this? I think I remember being told that there was an issue with OMB holding up funding on this.
Last year, this was tabled. This was one of the projects that when we were asked to slow down spend due to COVID, this one was among the group that was pulled by us and slowed at the time. Now we are working with OMB to find out whether this project would be capitally eligible. And at the moment, Speaker Corey Johnson provided basically the funding for this project. At the moment, it does not seem that we are going to have a favorable answer on that. And therefore, the reserved 20% of the air rights from the sale of the parcels at Block 675 would be eligible for this, since it's a capital maintenance project in Community Board 4. And we would work with Speaker Johnson to redirect the funds to another worthy project that needs capital maintenance support in his district.
So we're still going to take the money from Corey.
Sorry?
We'll still take the money from Corey. We'll just use it else.
Yes, we are. I mean, Corey's been, as you know, or Speaker Johnson has been extremely generous to the park, and we think that he'd be receptive to us proposing one or two other projects that he could consider reallocating to.
But it looks like this is going to get paid for out of Block 675 money.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's my current guess.
I have two just really quick questions. One is just to make sure I'm clear. So the only prior approval by the board, prior funding approval by the board for this was the $29,700 for the conservation plan. There's been nothing done for actually doing work. Nothing has been approved prior for doing work to it. That's one. And then the second question is, it looks like 10%, a 10% contingency is standard on these sorts of capital projects. Do we have a sense, since this is in construction, that that's appropriate in this case as well? Do we feel pretty comfortable? Or is there some broader uncertainty related to this? Or maybe even less, like less uncertainty? I don't know which it is, but is 10% appropriate?
The first question, you're correct, that actually the board did not have to approve the initial $29,000 because it's within the dollar amount that the trust staff can authorize directly. And that did entail the conservator working with the Public Design Commission and with us and the artist to figure out like what to do, such as the paint. So, so you're correct about that. No other expenditures to repair it or do anything else with it yet. This does not have the standard 10% contingency on it that I'm aware of. Kate, is that correct?
I think it is in the board memo.
Yes.
And
Oh,
just
sorry.
as a standard practice, but
Okay. So I guess what I would say is that there was a lot of scrutiny on this project, means and methods. The conservator, the rigging team, everybody came out to the site in advance to look at how they would get this monumental piece of art back onto a truck and so forth. So that kind of site visit has already happened in this case. And I think that because of that, we feel fairly confident, and I'm looking at Kate again, that this is a good amount. If we're open to adding another 5% if that's what people think we should do.
I don't think that would be necessary, but I think we like the idea of just having something in reserve in case they get it to the shop and they start working on it and there's something we didn't expect, but.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thanks.
I know you have had this sculpture here for a while. Do we know how much it cost initially to get this here and put it in place?
We could find that out for all of you. This actually was done in the era where I was not here, so I don't know. But Pam, do you have any memory of this from your?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't yet on the board. I was on board 4 and it was part of the 1% for, the trust was required. That was the 1% for art program. And the trust was required to put a certain amount of money aside. And we did a pretty extensive search for it was actually really fun. We did extensive search for artists to do something in each segment and spread the money out over the park. And I think, Noreen, 3 out of the 4 were built, and this was one of them. But I guess we're going back 20 years, 18 years, I think. Noreen's better at those dates than I am, but it's been a while.
I think this probably opened in about 2005 with this sculpture. So I think that's
Right.
about the era for it. But Purnima, I think we can figure out the cost. Just as a matter of curiosity.
I couldn't tell you what the exact numbers were other than we had to put aside that amount and then it got divvied up among the sections of the park.
I should know the answer to this, but in the 1% for art program, is there any money set aside for maintenance, or it's given and so there's no?
It's a real challenge. I mean, that actually is a good idea to allow that in the future. I know that City Parks has many more sculptures than we do, and especially if they're not necessarily capitally eligible, trying to keep them all looking good is a burden.
Yeah. Okay, great questions, everyone. Any other questions or concerns? Do I have a motion to authorize amendment of the contract with Wilson Conservation LLC for the conservation of the private passage sculpture?
So moved.
Thanks, Eric. Second.
Second.
Thanks. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the motion is approved. The last item for the board is a request for the approval of the estuarian the sanctuary management plan dated September 2021. Noreen?
Sure. The lower Hudson River estuary within and beyond Hudson River Park is one of the most significant estuarine habitats in the United States. And in 1998, in recognition of its ecological importance, the Hudson River Park Act designated the park's water section as the Hudson River Park Estuarine Sanctuary and charged the trust with creating a sanctuary management plan, or ESMP, to guide park development and operations in and along the Hudson River within the park's boundaries. The act specified that this plan must be approved by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and that it should provide for conservation of marine resources found in this area with special consideration for habitat values, environmental education and research, public recreational use of the water, including for boating, fishing, and swimming, and authorized commercial maritime uses and other water-dependent uses. The act also allows for the creation of water surface zones within the sanctuary. The park's first estuarine sanctuary management plan was created in 2002, a few years after the Hudson River Park Act had been passed by the state legislature, and just as the trust was beginning to build the park. Accordingly, that plan necessarily focused on building the park and doing so in an environmentally responsible manner and in a way that created public access to the river through park construction, environmental education, and some research. That plan focused on resource protection more than habitat enhancement, and given its era, did not focus on topics like climate change and coastal resiliency. In 2017, staff began the process of drafting the 2021 ESMP in close collaboration with DEC and a technical advisory committee comprised of experts in 3 management areas: public access and recreation, environmental education, and research and habitat enhancement. At the start of the process, staff also conducted public surveys to solicit community feedback regarding sanctuary awareness, as well as perceptions on progress and goals for the future. The board's sanctuary committee has also convened and reviewed progress over this period. As a result of this collective effort, on May 27, 2021, the trust issued a notice commencing the public review and comment period for the draft ESMP. Outreach included posting the notice and draft document on the trust website, publishing public notices, and conducting extensive email outreach to advisory council members, community boards, elected officials, and environmental and academic colleagues. The public comment period remained open until August 9th, 2021, including a public hearing held on June 29th. Responses overall have been very favorable. The directors have all received a copy of the response to comments document, as well as the proposed final ESMP that shows the changes based on the comments in red font. The ESMP is organized into 2 sections. The first section provides an overview of progress and accomplishments under the original 2002 ESMP action agenda. The second section sets forth the 2021 to 2030 action agenda, which is intended to guide the trust and its partners in managing the sanctuary through the current decade. Each management area begins with an aspirational vision statement or elevator pitch, followed by broadly phrased goals, and then specific projects and actions that identify our current strategies for reaching the goal. Projects will be iterative, evolving over time as methods, partnerships, funding, or other opportunities present themselves. Based on feedback from our TAC, we also added a 3rd column, which identifies the trust's best current projections for project implementation, time horizons, and funding availability. Though given the nature of city, state, and trust annual budgeting processes, these could change. The ESMP also highlights that since the sanctuary waters are only a subset of a larger river, harbor, and watershed, the wildlife and water within the sanctuary are influenced by decisions affecting these water bodies as well. The intent of the action agenda is for it to remain a meaningful, well-utilized document guiding policy for the trust and other decision makers. Toward this end, the document commits the trust to convening an annual meeting for the full TAC for the purposes of sharing and reviewing progress toward accomplishing action agenda goals in the preceding year, and identifying and discussing action agenda priorities and funding targets and opportunities for accomplishing action agenda goals for the coming year. A report on annual progress, priorities, and sanctuary funding opportunities will also be made available to the Trust Board of Directors and Advisory Council. We are grateful to the board's Sanctuary Committee, the Advisory Council, members of the TAC, and staff at DEC for their time, ideas, and commitment to the sanctuary. On a personal note, I would like to give a special shout out to Carrie Roble, Tina Walsh, Nicolette Witcher, and all the members of our River Project staff. Since my office is right next to theirs, I can personally attest to the degree to which they have put care and thought into every word, image, and conversation about the ESMP within the trust and far beyond its walls. Our River Project staff has earned a huge amount of respect from the environmental community, including as leaders in conversations about DEI in this sector. The trust therefore requests board approval of the River Project Hudson River Park Estuarine Sanctuary Management Plan dated September 2021, and authorization to formally submit it to DEC for its approval in accordance with Section 8 of the Hudson River Park Act. Vicki, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Okay, with kudos to those that you called out. Thank you. Any questions or comments about the plan?
Yeah, I'd like to just make a comment. So I'm going to abstain since DEC still has a formal approval. But I wanted to give everybody at Hudson River Park a shout out and say thank you very much for completing this report. It's a really significant milestone for the conservation and protection of the sanctuary. And I know, multiple people at DEC have worked on this over the years, not least which was my predecessor, Steve Zahn, and he would be very happy that we're at this point today. Thank you to everybody.
Thanks to your team too, Patrick.
Pam?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say, I heard, of course, on the sanctuary committee, we had the presentations and discussions, and I also attended the public hearing and the discussions at the advisory council. And I can tell you, the team did such an amazing job, and they really deserve a lot of credit. Because one, I don't know that there's another park in the city that is doing this level of environmental work. The thing was so well received in a group of people who don't always see eye to eye. As you know, in this park and all public spaces in New York, there's it has to be all things to all people. And I think the team did a great job, like meeting the preservation goals and also giving the trust some room to grow and breathe with this document. And it was so well received. It was really impressive. I think it's because they really left no stone unturned. They went through this, so they did such a great job.
Thanks.
And at risk of just repeating everybody else, I'll repeat everybody else. It was a great process, a great public process, and I think it's obviously a great moment for this because the trust is now built out so much, right? And you can really pivot towards focusing on a lot of the environmental education and the access and the habitat improvements. So it's really very timely, and I guess making it a 10-year plan is a sign that we can't hope to anticipate more than 10 years in the future, and that's what we should plan for. So that's great.
Thank you all.
Terrific. Any other questions or concerns or kudos?
Kudos.
Okay. Okay. If not, I will call for a motion to approve. I cannot say this word, Estuarine Sanctuary Management Plan. Apologies. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
One abstention.
One abstention. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. All right, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that completes the board action items for approval today. And so we will now turn to ask Ms. Doyle to present the president's report. Maureen?
Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking our longtime board member, Larry Goldberg, for his many years of service to the trust. Larry took his responsibilities to the park seriously, and many of our current procurement and employment practices directly benefited from Larry's ideas, involvement, and careful review. Before becoming a trust board member, Larry was a member of the Parks Advisory Council representing Community Board 2, and he's as familiar as anyone here with the park's efforts to figure out a long-term solution for Pier 40. Larry was also unfailingly supportive of park staff, always making time for us and our questions, and always checking in before or after board meetings to make sure he was fully informed on our projects, initiatives, and challenges. I know we're all grateful to him for his service. And now I have the pleasure of welcoming our new board member, ID Arude, who was appointed by Borough President Gail Brewer to replace Larry. Chris Fazio and I had the opportunity to meet with ID in person last week. ID is the co-chief operating officer and chief financial officer of the Whitney Museum of American Art and has responsibility for a broad range of strategic, operational, and policy-making functions, including direct oversight of capital and operating budgets, finance, treasury, investments, endowment, human capital strategy, and institutional legal risk management. In addition, ID leads diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility initiatives at the Whitney. ID is a graduate of the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and Morgan State University. We are so fortunate he has agreed to contribute his talents to the park, and I'll pause to let him say hello himself.
Wow, Noreen, thank you. Thanks for the very warm welcome. And I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here as the newest member of the team. It's really interesting because the Hudson River Park, I feel like is intertwined with my life, both personally and professionally in so many ways. Having moved to the city in 2006, I've never known the city without the park. And my first residence was on Christopher Street. So the Christopher Street Pier was my sort of every evening, every weekend spot. So the park is near and dear to my heart. And obviously in my day job at the Whitney Museum, we've worked very closely with the trust in so many ways, especially most recently to help realize David Hammond's Days End sculpture on Pier 52. So it feels like this comes full circle in many ways. I had the pleasure of getting a primer from Noreen and Christine last week and the sort of rich history of the park, and this meeting itself has been illuminating to me. And I've gotten an intro to Pam and to Lowell as well. We'll be getting together in person once it's safe to do so. No rush, Lowell. But anyway, thanks for having me, and hopefully I can be helpful in some way to the trust.
I'm sure in many ways. Welcome. And
Welcome.
Thank you.
and one thing is you have the best shovel that I've ever seen, right? So,
Groundbreaking.
yeah,
The start of this
exactly.
building that I'm in right now.
Wow, that's
It's a great memento.
that's
It's after
much
all the
better.
Whitney. They
Much
just
better
couldn't
shovels
fix
than we
the
get.
Yes, exactly.
It was part of an artist project. That's how we do it.
Of course. But we're delighted to have you, ID.
Thank you.
So on a preliminary basis, we discussed with ID that he'll be asked to participate in some committees. So Chair Bean, maybe we can work with you between meetings to figure that out. Finance seems to be calling him, but I'll let you and he discuss that.
That sounds good to me.
As you know, the trust and staff have been, trust staff and board have been very busy with procurement activities, all of which means there's a lot happening in the realm of design and construction. Things are going very well at the Gansevoort Peninsula, where Stephen Dubner Landscaping has been concentrating initially on the salt marsh and beach in order to complete the in-water portions before the construction moratorium. Construction above the water elevation will continue for as long as weather cooperates. On the land side, the soils from the completed surcharge effort are currently being redistributed around the peninsula to create the new site elevations. With today's approval of JR Cruise and EJ Electric contracts, the trust will begin construction on the remainder of Gansevoort Peninsula later this fall, including construction of the shared use pedestrian esplanade, reconstructed bikeway, dog run, and fitness area. With board approval of the TravCon contract, the trust will also begin fabrication of submerged features so that they will be ready for installation next spring and summer after being seeded with oyster spat. Based on today's board approvals of the funding needed for the various building construction contractors, staff expects to select contractors and get to work on shop drawing submittals later this fall. The construction contracts for the Chelsea Waterside Park Phase 2, approved by the board at the last meeting, have been executed, and staff expects mobilization to commence next week. After installing protective site fencing, the contractors will begin in the center of the site and will then move to the dog run and athletic field. We're doing our best to time the work based on slower seasons for each use, but since nothing is ever truly slow in Hudson River Park, some disruption is inevitable. We provided a construction update to Community Board 4 earlier this week and are working on signage and website updates to inform the public. The goal is to complete all the work at Chelsea Waterside Park by fall 2022. At Pier 97, the shade structures fabrication is ongoing. Our designer recently visited the fabrication site in the Netherlands to inspect the completed mock-up. Site work and electrical construction on the pier are expected to commence in October, with construction generally starting at the western end of the pier and moving east. Our design and construction team will also continue evaluating the Pier 97 building construction proposals as set forth in today's action item. The trust has a meeting with the New York State Department of Transportation scheduled to discuss next steps regarding the TAP grant that will be funding the majority of the Esplanade and bikeway improvements connecting Clinton Cove and the Riverside Park South project at 59th Street. At Pier 40, work has begun on the 7th and final phase of the pile repairs, and we expect that in spring 2022, all of the pier's 3,463 piles will have been jacketed. Up on the roof, the reconstruction of the southern section is progressing with an anticipated completion in late fall. The scope includes the reconstruction of the area known as the Passa Field, in addition to the structural work needed to support parking. The facade work on the east and north facades was completed over the summer. Over the next few months, we'll be considering priorities and cost estimates for our other Pier 40 infrastructure repairs, and will then discuss recommendations with the board. Staff has been working with the owners of the project at 550 Washington Street to coordinate plans for a new crosswalk into the park that would require shifting the location of the existing city bike station to the north and modifying the existing landscape design in this area to meet the new crosswalk at grade. The property owners retained Matthews Nielsen for the design because Matthews Nielsen was also the original designer for this area of Hudson River Park. Staff worked closely with Signe Nielsen and her team to develop the new site design for this area, which will continue to include lawn panels, an abundance of flowers, and a city bike station. The advisory council received a presentation on the proposed plan from the development team in September, and a presentation will be provided to Community Board 2 shortly. Finally, with today's approval of the Olin Partnership's existing design contract, the trust plans to finalize the design of the science play area with the goal of starting construction late spring or early summer. We are also endeavoring to issue requests for proposals for both the estuarium and the upland area between 29th to 44th Streets within the next several months. Are there any questions on our design and construction initiatives? Okay. Within the next couple of weeks, we expect to complete the installation of the collection of in-water features known as the Tribeca Habitat Enhancement Project. As you know, reef balls and gabions seeded with juvenile oysters were installed between Pier 26 and Pier 32. Next week, the contractor will begin installing textured concrete piles within the Pier 32 pile field. Collectively, these enhancements will help to increase the sanctuary's oyster population, diversify river habitat, and create a corridor to support local fish populations. This project will be monitored over the next few years to inform future habitat enhancement design and decision-making. The Trust River Project team is wrapping up a successful summer of programming and internships. In addition to in-person public programming at the Wet Lab and Tide Deck, Celebrate Oysters and Tide Deck tours, our educators offered STEM enrichment programming for a wide range of camp groups. Many of our virtual programs also continue to be popular, with the weekly Live from the Field series that takes place on Instagram Live, attracting an average of nearly 1,000 views per program. This summer, we were excited to welcome a team of high school and college interns to assist us with ongoing research and education programs. This included the 4th year of the Includes internship program, which serves students from communities underrepresented in STEM by providing stepping stones for learning field and lab science skills and developing leadership and communication skills. When we have a less packed agenda, I would love to devote time at one of our meetings so that you can interact directly with Carrie Roble and Tina Walsh about how our river project engages with students across New York City with respect to sanctuary issues, STEM, and DEI. Given discussions I've had with a number of you informally, I think you'd find the conversation interesting, and I think it will likely spur further discussion for all of us. I'm happy to report that the park will be hosting its annual Marine Science Festival, Submerge, with both virtual and in-park activations from Tuesday, October 19th to Thursday, October 21st. New this year is the intentional inclusion of local STEM students in several panel discussions, such as harbor habitat, river wildlife, climate change, and local water quality. We are proactively encouraging partner organizations to consider whether they can broaden the range of official voices and presenters to ensure that students participating in Submerge can find role models representing the broadest spectrum of New York's population. Public STEM programs will continue through early November, ending the season with the annual Pumpkin Smash on Sunday, November 7th, to promote sustainability in the community compost program. Our public programs department has also been extremely busy this outdoor season as the department pivoted from virtual events back to in-person programs featuring dance, music, and fitness, including Jazz at Pier 84, Sunset on the Hudson music performances, and the well-attended participatory dance series. October brings Sunset Salsa to Pier 45. Increasingly popular free fitness classes staged in Tribeca, Greenwich Village, Chelsea, and Hell's Kitchen throughout the park will also continue through the end of October. Don't miss your chance to join a pier full of people doing anything from high-intensity workouts to yoga, Tai Chi, or Pilates. Staff continues to learn a lot from the limited numbers of guest events we have authorized at Pier 76, including the final concert of New York State's pop-up performances and the American Express US Open activation, which featured the installation of 6 temporary tennis courts. During Fashion Week, Coach hosted 300 guests for the introduction of the brand's Spring 2022 line of products. Next up at Pier 76 is the New York Wine and Food Festival's grand tasting event on October 15th, 16th, and 17th, which raises funds for the Food Bank of New York City and God's Love We Deliver. As the park continues to receive event inquiries, we will continue to strive to maintain a balance of events staged on the pier with available public open space for park patrons to enjoy. In Chelsea, a temporary art installation was installed as part of the Armory Show offsite program on the upland area north of Pier 64. The sculptures look like oversized baseball hats mounted on pedestals and are entitled Empire and Materially Superior by artist Katja Larson, represented by Icon Contemporary. It's been fun to see members of the public engaging with them. They'll be on display until early December. Are there any questions on our river project or public programming initiatives? Yep, okay. As you know, staff has been negotiating a new lease with Chelsea Piers, and we're endeavoring to complete negotiations so that we can commence the required significant action process in October. As required by the Hudson River Park Act, this will include a public hearing and at least a 60-day public comment period, after which time the board of directors would be asked to formally consider and approve the proposed final lease. We'll be sharing formal updates with the board prior to the trust commencing the public review. In the meantime, staff and Chelsea Piers attended Tuesday's meeting of the Waterfront Committee of Community Board 4 to explain the rationale for the new lease and to provide our perspective on the public benefits of it. Chelsea Piers has an existing lease agreement that predates Hudson River Park and that was prepared and executed by the New York State Department of Transportation in 1994. Chelsea Piers approached the trust because it needs the security of a longer lease term in order to more easily secure long-term financing, capital necessary for repairs, and to retain long-term tenants. Chelsea Piers is in the process of recovering from the economic losses brought by COVID. Chelsea Piers is currently the trust's largest revenue generator, is a major center of employment for New York City, and of course has a unique mix of sports and recreation uses that a generation of New Yorkers have come to rely on. The current lease term expires in mid-2043. From the trust perspective, there are many public benefits associated with a new lease. The State Department of Transportation lease is outdated and does not include language that the trust includes in other leases for commercial uses in the park. A new lease also offers the opportunity to negotiate for additional rent and other public improvements, such as improvements to public access at the premises. Staff will provide additional information to the directors once the lease negotiations conclude, and will also conduct additional outreach, including to the community board and advisory council throughout the public review process scheduled for this fall. Are there any questions? Finally, I'd be remiss in not notifying the board of the extent to which electric bikes and scooters are now using the State Department of Transportation bike path, despite signage clearly posted along the corridor stating that they are not permitted at this location. This is hands down one of the most frequent issues discussed at both advisory council meetings and within the trust among staff. While the trust does not have jurisdiction over the bikeway, PEP assists in endeavoring to enforce violations. That said, the number of unauthorized vehicles, frequency of this use, the number of entrances and exits to the bikeway, and the speed at which the vehicles travel are all factors that make enforcement challenging, whether by NYPD, PEP, or others. With the continued growth of e-bikes, it seems to staff here that any solution that depends on enforcement exclusively is destined to fail unless other agencies are somehow able to vastly supplement their current enforcement personnel. I'd like to suggest a meeting among interested members of the board of directors to start discussing this issue in more detail. And we'd appreciate it if you could let Christine Fazio or me know if you'd be interested in participating. The Public Authorities Law, Section 2879, requires an annual review by the board of service contracts with a term in excess of 1 year. Beginning in 2019, trust staff had recommended providing the board on an annual basis a list of all active contracts. In your board packet, you'll find a list of the trust's active contracts with a 1-year term or longer. If there are any contracts you'd like to discuss, please let me know, and you can always call me, Kim Quinones, or Christine Fazio if you need information about any of the trust contracts. Similarly, when the board adopted the trust revenue guidelines in November 2019, trust staff committed to sharing a list of active revenue contracts, including leases and concession agreements with a term longer than 1 year on an annual basis with the audit committee. Thus, you'll also find a list of revenue contracts in your board packet today. And if anyone has any questions or comments, again, please feel free to reach out to us. Also included in your board packet are the PEP statistics and a list of all contracts between $100,000 and $200,000 and the financials for the first 5 months of the fiscal year. Total operating revenues were $17 million and operating expenses, including net capital maintenance and equipment, were $10.9 million. And that's it for my report.
Thank you so much, Noreen. Any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, please remember to let Chris or Noreen know if you want to be on that e-bike subcommittee. Very important problem that we're facing all over the city. Okay, any questions, comments? All right, if not, I will ask Jeffrey Lefrancois to present the Advisory Council report. Jeffrey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to start with a couple of rounds of congratulations to the trust for a number of reasons. Noreen, Madam President, I was surprised to not hear you mention the Pier 26 Masterworks Award, which the trust is receiving from the Municipal Art Society for the great design and public artwork on that pier. So congratulations on that one.
Thank you. I don't know that it has been officially announced yet. So.
No, it was. I got an email from the Municipal Art Society.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I haven't. I was
your
keeping my
code
lips.
is on the website, so I'll send you the website as well. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I hope I didn't step on toes, but I wanted to congratulate accordingly. It is public. So
well, thank you for making it more public.
You're welcome. And I mean, extremely well deserved.
Well, so. I will congratulate our design team and clearly Madeline for her vision in stewarding that too.
Absolutely. And congrats also on the ESMP adoption and passage today. The advisory council had a lot to say on that. I think from where many sit on the AC, I think a good document in the end, not everybody's thrilled. And I think there's a number of folks in the advisory council who will continue to opine accordingly, but it was a significant undertaking by the trust, and bravo from the advisory council on accomplishing that as well. And then congrats and welcome to ID on joining the trust board. Our professional lives overlap, so it's nice to see a familiar face on trust meetings as well.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Absolutely. A couple of other notes. In response to Noreen, your comments about the bikeway, one of the things that I took very seriously when I became chair of the advisory council was to stop the entity from just being a firing squad at each other in a circle about talking about e-bikes on the Greenway. We've come a really long way from that being the only topic that dominates our meetings. It is creeping back up in terms of its relevancy and topic of discussion in the meetings. Where we have found universal agreement is on two fronts. It's an abject failure of city and state policy to not continue to meet the changing micro-mobility needs of New Yorkers. Last spring, the advisory council, as well as all 3 community boards in which Hudson River Park reside, sent a letter to then Governor Cuomo requesting that a lane of the West Side Highway be taken over at the peak of the pandemic to provide for more access for cyclists. This was at a time, of course, when I could walk across the West Side Highway because there was not a single car on it. And given the significant use, not just in e-bikes, but in bikes in general, we really continue to be extremely frustrated by the lack of action from the state and city on this. I know Board 4 continues to address it, and I know it's going to come up at our October meeting of the advisory council. So Noreen, I'm really happy you guys are going to have a discussion about this. I know it's a thorn in the side of the park in general. And we, of course, you didn't even note the number of people that are riding e-bikes, not on the Greenway, but also on the promenade of the park as well, which is problematic. I would also note that we take it very seriously. I do, and many on the advisory council do, that it's not just delivery folks that are using the Greenway on e-bikes. I really believe it's not. There's folks that live uptown and in the Bronx that commute on cycle and an e-bike. So we're being very cautious. I'm making sure the advisory is very cautious on how we approach this, in that it isn't a tax from a majority white advisory council on a whole bunch of people of color using e-bikes to get around. So I wanted to be very transparent in the discussions that the advisory council has had on this topic. And I'm Noreen, I hope you'll report that this is something that the directors are going to be talking about at our next meeting as well.
Absolutely.
Great. Just a couple of other updates. The advisory council didn't meet in July or August, so we had a lengthy September meeting at which we did receive updates about the crosswalk at Charlton-ish Street on the West Side Highway. Of course, I'm delighted that this is happening. There were some questions from the advisory council, but overall, greater access to the park is something we all look for. I think this will be a means of mitigation for increased workers and pedestrians, and certainly kids in the area for a Pier 40 access and back and forth. Another key topic we took up was the issues of safety and access in and out of the water, actually. There's a request for many more life rings along the park, and continues to be asks for ladders, frankly, not to easily allow access in and out of the water, but because people just do it. There were reports of regular swimmers at Pier 26, both going after volleyballs and those just going for a swim. Cops sort of scold, but no ticket is issued, and so it becomes a regular reoccurrence. The issue is once they're in the water, it's really dangerous to get out, given the piles, the stuff that is around it. So we are hoping there's greater consideration from the trust given to not just life rings, ropes, but also ladders to make, if somebody, a rescue easier, where that can continue to be the case. This was triggered by, I believe it was in August when somebody went missing off of one of the piers and unfortunately wasn't able to be rescued alive. And I know this topic is going to continue to come up because it has continued to fill my inbox since our September meeting. Earlier this year, the Advisory Council instituted a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to both look internally at itself as an entity, and also see where it could make recommendations to the trust where appropriate. The committee started its report by stating that number one, the trust does an excellent job as it relates to programming and its inclusion, diversity, and equity efforts already. So we start from there, recognizing that the programming the park offers is top-notch and reaches a wide swath of New Yorkers from all backgrounds, geographies, ethnicities, and certainly income levels. And so really, I worked to pivot the conversation inward and get the Advisory Council to think about this, but then to see where we could lend some recommendations to the trust as well. So that'll be an ongoing discussion with the Advisory Council and the trust. We have an Advisory Council meeting the second Tuesday in October, where we're figuring out our agenda now. So I leave it at that for everybody this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Any questions or comments for Jeffrey?
I just do want to say that, to the point about the bikeway as an example, I think I want to thank Jeffrey for the effort to, instead of the kind of circular discussion, the bikeway is technically not part of the park. We are the ones that are physically closest to it. But how do we make progress on issues? And I would like to just reiterate that that Jeffrey has been very helpful in trying to help steward those conversations.
Thank you, Noreen.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, and to all the Advisory Council. Okay, I will now ask Connie Fishman to present on behalf of the Hudson River Park Friends.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's nice to be here. I want to welcome ID to his first trust board meeting. I don't know if you're familiar with Friends, but I would be happy to talk to you about what we do. And I have a 21 or 2-year history with Hudson River Park. So there's lots to talk about if you're interested, and we can get in touch.
I would love that. I know some about the Friends, but I would love that. Thank you.
Great. So what we're doing right now is basically madly getting ready for the gala, which is a week from today. So far, we have raised more than $2 million. And as of yesterday, we are now sold out. So if you didn't buy your ticket, there's still a waiting list, and there's still cocktails, which have less of a limitation on who attends. This is an in-person event. The cocktails are taking place on Pier 62 and the dinner at Pier 60 in Chelsea Piers. We're capping occupancy this year at roughly 2/3 of what it would be normally so that we can keep the tables spaced out more generously. And our usual revenue projection pre-COVID for this event was $3 million. So we're going to be making roughly 2/3 of what we normally would be. We'll also be raising money there to complete the fundraising for the Pier 26 Science Playground Capital Campaign. We're going to use revenue that we collect through the live auction and the cash call, as well as any donations that have come in from people who can't attend or were concerned about attending an event of this size. We have about 380,000 out of the 3.5 million left to raise. And our hope is that we'll reach the goal by the end of the virtual gala, which we'll be having on the 28th of October. For those who can't attend the live event, it's free. We started it last year because of COVID and decided that it was a good way to include people who couldn't come to the live event, and especially this year, people who might otherwise want to support but aren't quite ready for an in-person gala yet. With the continuing challenges posed by COVID and the size limitations, they also affect our group volunteering. There's still a decrease in the size of the groups that we have in our volunteer program from what we were at pre-pandemic. However, despite this, we have had 600 volunteers already this year. We estimate another 400 by year's end. So that is roughly 2/3 of what roughly 50% of what we had in 2019 before the pandemic. And we're hopeful that a full schedule, normal 2,000 a year that we previously had will be ready for 2022. Our advocacy meeting committee has been meeting with the trust, will be meeting with the trust to talk about future priorities, in particular with the elected officials having turned over or about to turn over, both at the city and the state level. We want to make sure that we can coordinate and think about the things that both Friends and the trust need most. Friends, staff, and board will be setting up meetings with the new governor, with the members of the legislature whose districts encompass the park, and after November with the newly elected council members and members of the mayor's staff. And we'll be trying to hold those meetings during fall and winter in the city as well as up in Albany. Finally, on the foundation side, we just received a grant for the trust composting equipment. It will significantly increase the volume of compost that will be allowed to be processed at the Trust Community Compost Center. And we have several grants recently for plants and supplies for the horticulture department and scientific equipment for the river project. So those are our most recent activities. Hopefully we'll see some of you next week at the gala, and if not, we'll invite you to the virtual gala and send you the pictures and some video clips from the event. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you for all you're doing. Okay, is there any further business? Anyone? Questions, comments, any other business? If not, may I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Nobody wants to leave.
Aye.
Did I miss a second? I'm sorry.
No, second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
To everyone.
Opposed? The motion is approved, and thank you all. Welcome, Heidi, and this meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.